Welcome to the Week in Italian Startup, where we discuss the latest highlights happening in the Italian tech and investment ecosystem. In the ever-ending realm of space exploration, one company from the south of Italy is venturing into the future of space, which is interesting. So, Sidereus Space Dynamics has secured €5.1 million in seed plus funding, basically trying to pretty much revolutionizing space flight. I mean, no big deal, right? So it's very, it's very interesting. It's exactly super ambitious project that I'm sure you know better than I. Very interesting. So the funding round was led by Primo Space and CDP Venture Capital SGR with support from Italia Venture II, which is Fondo Imprese Sud, which essentially aims at supporting all companies from mid-Italy to the south of Italy in general. And what is interesting is that Sidereus is pioneering the development of one of the world's first single stage to orbit, or SSTO rocket. And this is a big deal, because rockets have typically been multi-phase and generally massive and huge and bulky. These guys are trying to rewrite the paradigm, so making essentially commercial space flight way more accessible than it has ever been. What's your take, Nick, on this?
Yeah, well, I have to say that I only know so much about the company, since it is from the Primo Space team and it's a dedicated team to the space investments. But you're right. The funny stuff about this company is that it's funded by basically kids, so very, very young guys with very deep knowledge about what they're doing. They challenge established scientists around the idea of a single stage rockets, because it is theoretically possible, but no one never did it for many reasons. So don't ask me, I have no idea. But they got to pre-flight testing basically, and they're going to get to that phase with this funding, and that's big news because it means that the initial R&D and the first prototypes were working. So kudos to them, and very happy for this round, bringing capital to the south of Italy, to have CDP on board, continue investing on the startup. So it's fascinating, because this is really something extremely new, also from the physics point of view. So there is an implementation of something that was only in theory so far, or has been tested 100%. And failed. So it's they are too young to know that it can't be done, apparently, and so they're doing it.
I love that. No, I love that. Like, no prejudice and no history of failing. So that's awesome. What I find interesting are three different points. So first of all is a consideration about how exactly a small rocket will be like the future of space logistics. So we think about logistics when it comes to big rocket and transportation of small satellites. This is like another way to think about space. Well, not much as space exploration, but really at catering all the satellite constellation, rotating around our planet, which, it's people don't think about that much. But there are a bunch of different kinds of satellite, and there is a big, thick layers, actually multiple layers of satellites orbiting around Earth. So that's someone needs to do something about it, and that's really cool. So they focus on two elements at the beginning, which is basically efficient satellite positioning. So I believe, given the different altitudes and the orbits, then it's becoming a bigger and bigger deal because of the overcrowding problem, probably, that we are starting seeing in general. Number one, from a sort of the product perspective, I would say. The second part, which I thought was very, very interesting, was the lean operation that they aim at, which essentially they're aiming at making rocket launches with minimal infrastructure. So, the rocket is 3.5 meter, the payload, it's not huge, it's like 10 to 13 kilos. But what is interesting is that, yeah, you can launch it from your grandma's house, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, as you were saying, so I think you tend to think about satellites as huge things, a few meters wide, height and long. But that's not necessarily true. A lot of the stuff going around in the orbit is just a few centimeters. So I mean, they're very light and very tiny. And there is an increasing demand for putting these items into orbit. So, and moving around a huge rocket to bring this stuff to orbit is too expensive, unsustainable. So there's a market there. There's a market opportunity, and it will be the first one probably that we try to address. I was reading about China and other governments and institutions, for example, aiming at going after Elon Musk satellite constellation, trying to replicate the same, avoiding to have just one player with a worldwide coverage of a connectivity network. So there is a race there, for example, going on, and these are not huge satellites, so they're smaller ones, smaller kinds, and expect that they will become smaller and smaller as technology improves. So it's an interesting trend going forward.
Cool, definitely good to have an alternative to Starlink, because
Starlink, thank you.
Player that can easy like become just a reference point forever, because it's already working and it's accessible, and it's definitely like something very profitable and will be profitable for sure. Another element that I was thinking about is that researching a bit on their website, they essentially focus, I'm no rocket science expert, but talking about orbits, they focus on two very specific orbits, which essentially it's the SSO orbit and the LEO orbit. And the thing I was thinking is that maybe those are probably the more commercially viable orbits that are up there. So just to give some context, what is interesting is that the SSO orbit is basically an acronym from Sun Synchronous Orbit. What is interesting is that this is a polar kind of orbit, so it's not a high altitude, it's pretty close to Earth. And basically, as you launch a satellite in that orbit, there is basically a relative point of fix according to the sun. So the satellite pretty much circulates and get at the same point and the same hour. So what is interesting is that, and we've seen this in a few deals before, about the use of satellite imaging data. So, and that's perfect. That's basically the perfect autoroute, if you will, for this kind of play. So the guys at Sidereus are extremely aware of that. So high resolution space imaging is coming, different kind of application, and it's exciting to see exactly what people are doing, from agriculture to weather to whatever. So that's pretty cool. So definitely one thing to keep in mind. The other one is the LEO, so the low Earth orbit, and is kind of like, I think is a slightly higher altitude, and the idea is that it is the closest orbit. It's for reference, this is the orbit of the International Space Station that goes around Earth essentially, and this is where a lot of telecommunication microsatellites and regular satellites are. So again, not only imaging but also telecommunication. So the question is like, in terms of thinking about space TAM, that's pretty much kind of the markets, the two kinds of like markets rotating orbitally across each other, where different applications are viable. So I thought it was particularly interesting.
Nice.
Yeah, let's get down on Earth, back on the planet, talking about agritech. Let's talk about Evja or Evja. I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
I think Evja.
Evja, perfect. So Evja, agritech startup, just secured a significant 4.2 million in a pre-Series A funding round. Evja is on a mission to revolutionize farming through the power of AI and data. So they developed this like OPI system, which essentially is an acronym for Observe, Predict, and Improve, which is kind of their philosophy. And the idea is to install a wireless data sensor to provide information about irrigation, nutrition, and crop protection in a way that people can meaningfully interpret those data and basically gain insight for the different agricultural operation. It's exciting, honestly, like future farming and agriculture where AI can intervene. It tells us how pervasive AI is. So nobody is immune. We've said it before. No industry is immune from AI, essentially.
Yeah, totally agree. Another good piece of information about this startup is another startup from the south of Italy. So again, proof that you can start a company from the south of Italy. You can do interesting stuff there. They've got international customers. They were accelerated in Italy, startup bootcamp food tech, and in the Netherlands. So international experience. So very good having a founding team with this capacity to go international and starting from the south. So very nice.
Super interesting. What I was thinking also that another element is the predictive aspect of the technology. So essentially they're also focusing on pest prediction. And given the amount of data, that can be like extremely valuable for risk management, crop risk management. And definitely it's a business. I wonder if in the future we'll see like more sort of a fitting model for pest prediction, including different kind of data points and data set and how accurate this thing would be depending on the crops, depending on geography, weather. So it's going to be very exciting to see how all this bunch of data set can actually be combined in something very valuable.
It's actually something that they're basically doing. So they started doing this using weather information, humidity information, soil conditions information to try to correlate and predict the emergence of pests, for example, fungi and stuff like that, occurring into defined crops. So it's probably going to get better and mixing information, for example, from Earth observation and satellites observation, adding more info, more data to what you can collect on the field. It will improve the capability and improve the quality and the yield of the crops. So we need this type of innovation.
We do. It's very key and critical. I wanted also to point out another significant player in this round is SEFEA Impact SGR, which kind of caught my eye, very interesting. They're known for their commitment to ethical finance and impact investment. They've been in the game since 2002. Interestingly enough, initially as a holding company, so kind of a private entity, that then transitioned into 2016 into an SGR by volume, of course, by growing. And what is interesting, I thought it was that it seems like a lot of Italian players into the VC ecosystem kind of follow this kind of transition. They start as SPV holding and then they move into the SGR. It's kind of their natural progression in a way. And we've seen this. I don't know if it's my bias or Nick, you have the same feeling. And I think it's a thing here.
We did the same.
You did the same.
Yeah, basically something similar. In order to set up a vigilated vehicle with Bank of Italy, you need to set up quite some capital, and you have a lot of things to get in order before being able to manage capital. So going through a holding company that you can use to invest capital, it's a faster way to market. So for smaller funds, it can make sense to start from a lighter type of vehicle. But as you grow, you will want to move to an SGR company, to an investment management company, because that's so much better. That's for sure.
Interesting. All right, moving on. Let's talk about life sciences. It's always interesting to track these kind of deals, even if we are a little bit outside the vertical, but let's talk about it. You suggested the deal that actually is pretty big. Cellply, life science startup, raising 3.6 million from Recomec, LIFTT, and Schia Ventures. So basically, they're developing a platform capable of measuring the effectiveness of cellular immunotherapies in the treatment of oncological disease. So it's a lot of information. So essentially,
it's a mouthful.
It is. Essentially, what they're doing is working on the efficiency of understanding how exactly like cancer treatment work, and their mechanism is, it looks like a card, a high-tech card, where you can actually test make different kind of experiments and gather a bunch of data regarding what has been working and what not in a very, very efficient way. And the idea is to help biopharmaceutical industries and factories to actually find the most effective version of any drug, identifying how that is responding with patient and optimizing production process. So that's the idea. What is interesting is that one of the founders successfully sold one of his former company to Apple. It was a fingerprint company, I believe, and that's curious. So definitely like a nice repeat founder. And going back to sort of the private companies like investing in the ecosystem, Schia Ventures is an SPV, special purpose vehicles made by private individual, mostly angel, that actually has invested in the past in a bunch of companies, including the first round of this company, and not exclusively to that. So very, very interesting elements.
Not much to add here. That's not my field. So.
Awesome. All right, let's talk about something I know Nick, you're excited about, which is PandasAI. Yeah, exactly. So, conversational data analysis. Italian founder, very, very, very interesting deal, I thought, raising 1.1 million in pre-seed. Funding from Runa Capital, which is a London-based firm, and Vento, which is related to Exor Ventures. So here we have a couple of interesting elements. So PandasAI is German, but the founder is Italian, and the investor, of course, are some of the most active players in the Italian ecosystem. And man, let's talk about the product. It looks like incredible to me. It's super interesting, and the real question here is that. Is this the death of the data analyst?
Well, that's a hard question. I'm not so sure. Probably the death of the data analyst was the feature from GPT-4 and ChatGPT doing correlations and analysis. No, that's not true. I don't believe it is the death of the data analyst. It's probably a further step in its evolution. But I think that the product is pure genius. This is it is for nerds, people that have been working with Python, Pandas. So if you know what I'm saying and you haven't tried PandasAI, please do it. Basically, you load your data frame into Pandas and then you chat with the data frame using a large language model, OpenAI or your own, whatever. The interesting about this startup and the deal is that Runa Capital is a Series A investor, and they put money in the pre-seed round. And this says something about what they saw in the startup. It seems it is open source, of course. And the stars on GitHub, the growth of stars on GitHub was so fast that they decided to invest just because people were loving the product.
This is so cool. It's a bottom-up sort of product. It's people like it. It's easy to install. Like it's an easy pip install in Python, and the way you can discuss with data is insane. And let's talk about this, conversational anything kind of trend. So there is this, this is forming. Anything will be conversational, being it data, being it talking with documents, with book, with legal documents, with images, I don't know. It's kind of relevant, I feel. And data analysis is one of the first great application, and no wonder, you know, people want to get insights from like a very, very easy to use like a LLM, which is effective, and you can basically apply easy queries in natural language. So yeah, it's the conversational wave coming in, and definitely we'll see something really cool happening. What is your take on this?
No, I totally agree. This is going to change the way so many of us work. Sometimes improve, sometimes change for good. So this is the beginning, and you will see just, you know, emerging from the ground up, making some processes faster, better, more precise, more open. So then
I agree.
It's gonna change the world, at least part of the world. And the fun stuff is that you might not notice it. You will just, you know, see things in a better way, and you will not understand how it happens.
I agree.
Pure magic.
That's awesome. That's awesome, and totally excited to see what's happening with the, you know, conversational part of anything, and see what are the edge of those applications for sure.
Yeah. The open question in this case
all
would
right,
be,
Nick.
How do you create a company out of this open source library? But I think
100%. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, the response of this tool is insane. I was checking the GitHub repository, and there is a lot of movement there. And I know you've been studying that.
I've been using it. I mean,
exactly. Awesome. So, Nick, one thing I want to point out also, people that are listening to this episode, is the kind of a brand new section about events. In your newsletter. I thought it was very cool. So Nick just added like a link where people can actually submit events happening in the startup ecosystem across Italy, and everything is going to be public. So I think it's super valuable, because we lack this kind of unified way to see events in general. So that's a very good initiative. Awesome.
Yeah, so basically the idea there is that there are so many things going on that I'm missing a lot of them. So I'm just asking people to tell me, hey, what's happening? And I'm sharing this knowledge with everybody. So it's great if you want to jump in and you know, list your event there, and it will be helpful for everybody reading the newsletter. So please do it. Same with the job sections that I reopened recently.
Exactly. All right, so that concludes the week's episode of The Week in Italian Startups. So remember to subscribe to our channel on Spotify and YouTube for more exciting news and stories from the Italian startup world. Thanks for joining us, and until next time.
Ciao, Jack. Take care. See you in a week.